Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. Hey, let's start Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Those of you watching me on the YouTubes, you can see that you can call me Sully. I'm going to adjust my seat right now. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Hey, for those of you who don't know who the heck I am a podcaster. I've been doing this for over a decade. I've been Emmy-nominated television producer. I've been a comedian, an actor, a writer, done all sorts of things, but I just love me my baseball. Maybe you saw me on HBO Sports. I don't know, but you're listening to me now, and I'm here. It is, we're recording for the third day of August 2022, the aftermath, kind of like when you see the city leveled after a Godzilla film. That's what the baseball landscape looks like right now after weeks and weeks of wondering what's going to happen to the trade deadline. We all know what happened. A lot of names that a lot of us don't know. I don't know, and you don't know. But Lindsay Crosby of Locked on MLB Prospects knows, and he's going to be my guest here today. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen, as we're available on all your free podcasting catchers. You can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Locked on MLB Pods. I'm your pal Sully. Oh, let's put that caption back up again. Follow me at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. So, yeah, as what happens every year, we see a lot of players traded in exchange for prospects. And a lot of times it's a bunch of nobodies who get traded. But not this year. Some big names got traded, including the Juan Sotos of the world, but also some big prospects got traded. And so let's just get right to the chase. Hey, Lindsay Crosby of Locked on MLB Prospects, welcome aboard on this crazy day post-trade deadline. How are you doing?
One, I'm glad to be back. Two, I am just about exhausted because in the same 3-week span, we had the MLB draft and the trade deadline, and prospect people like me need a nap.
Yeah, well, by the way, I was just going to say, is we're dropping this kind of in the evening of the 3rd. There were a lot of day games that were played. The Rays wound up edging the Blue Jays 3-2, which meant a lot because guess what? The Red Sox, the White Sox, and the Guardians are nipping on the Rays' heels right now. The Phillies beat the Braves, and the Mets, actually in a strange situation, played a minor league team in Washington called the Nationals, and they jumped ahead to a 9-0 lead, and they held on to a 9-5 victory. The White Sox, for all their troubles, are still only a few games out. The Red Sox, for all their troubles, they're only a few games out, but they lost to the Astros. The White Sox wound up beating the Royals. The Orioles are still hanging around. They doubled up the Rangers 6-3. The Twins are still holding on to the AL Central, but only by their fingernails. And guess what? Shane Bieber won and over the Diamondbacks 7-4. So we're starting to see some of these races tighten up a little bit. And we can't have the old, well, they'll make a trade to fill in the gaps because the trade deadline's come and gone. This is the time of the year where you're like, all right, boys, go get them. Go get them, Tiger. So, Lindsay, you were like one of those stockbrokers or one of those commodity brokers were running around as information was flying around at the stock exchange, the papers flying in the air. What was the most exciting and exhilarating thing about yesterday's madness?
Honestly, the most exhilarating thing for a prospect person to me was to have a trade the size of a Juan Soto trade. I just absolutely cannot fathom having something that big happen. I mean, having Juan Soto change teams is, there's not really a comparison for the size of a trade required to move a guy like a Juan Soto. And like, that's the, you're kind of like the baseball history guy. You've been watching baseball for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to go back and think about 2007.
Right.
Okay. Great year, right?
Yeah, it was I always like to call it that was last call at the bar because that was kind of the last real hurrah of the steroid era before things started breaking down. It was a wonderfully exciting year in baseball, and in retrospect, it was the end of a very strange era. But yes, it was a fantastic, fantastic year for baseball.
Yeah, there were two giant trades that year. I was trying to find a comparison to this Juan Soto deal, and I had always just kind of given out the Herschel Walker trade with like between the Vikings and the Cowboys was the closest comparison I had to Juan Soto. So in 2007, two giant trades. The Tigers and Marlins get together, and that's the Miguel Cabrera and Dontrell Willis trade.
Right.
And the Tigers actually only ended up sending two top 100 prospects. Now they sent six total players, but they only sent two top 100 prospects, and Andrew Miller and Cameron Maben. Of
Right.
the other four prospects, none of the other four had significant careers. That same year at the deadline was the Braves and the Rangers for Mark Teixeira. And this was a deal, three top 100 prospects, Jared Saltalamacchia, Elvis Andrus, and Matt Harrison. And then another guy, Neftali Feliz, who entered top 100s the next year after the trade, and then another top 15 prospects. So three top 100 prospects and a future top 100. And that still wasn't as big as the Juan Soto trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was six total players, four top prospects, and two major league pieces. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody's listening has already seen the deal, but MLBer Mackenzie Gore, MLBer Luke Voigt, and then number one prospect, shortstop CJ Abrams, number two prospect, outfielder Robert Hassel, number four prospect, outfielder James Wood, and probably the guy who's been the breakout player of the complex league this year, number 10 prospect, right-hand pitcher Jarlin Susana. It's a massive package, and the strangest thing is you did this whole trade for a guy who is incredibly young and could play for 15 more years.
Yeah.
Juan Soto is younger than 20 of the prospects that were in this year's futures game.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I've made this point several times, and listeners can probably do a shot every time I say this. But Juan Soto is the age of a prospect. He
Yeah.
is the age of someone that you would expecting to be included in a package, not be the package. This is not an example of someone who's like in there, about to turn 28, 29. This is, you expect a prospect to be about 22 or 23 years old who is a major league ready player. I'm not talking someone at a high ceiling single A player. But when you say we want a major league ready players, 22, 23 years old, where you got 4 or 5 potential prime years in front of you. That's one of the reasons why I'm really, really having a hard time thinking of a trade of a player of this magnitude who was not on the verge of free agency. I mean, the Randy Johnson for Mark Langston trade, which a lot of people have maligned the Expos for giving up on Randy Johnson, forgetting the fact that Mark Langston was an absolute ace at that time. And the Expos felt they were on the verge of doing something great. And they said, heck with this, let's put an ace on our team. And Randy Johnson was this big, tall, freakish player with blazing fastball, but was not a proven commodity at the time. And
Yeah.
Brian Holman was probably actually the more heavily touted prospect when you stop and think about it. But but even that was a situation of, Langston was an elite player for Seattle. They knew he was going to walk via free agency. There wasn't a chance he was going to resign with the Seattle Mariners. So they had to get something back from him. I have a really hard time thinking of a player who's a legit MVP candidate, who's this age. I think you do have to go back to Miguel Cabrera with the Marlins. And I think the interesting thing about both Cabrera and Juan Soto that's similar is they were traded when they were very young and not traded to a New York or Los Angeles or Boston or Chicago. And both of them already checked win a World Series off their to-do list.
when they
You
got
know,
traded. Yeah.
yeah, they were very young, seasoned former World Series champions, uh, which is again another unusual resume point for them.
Yeah, I mean, both of these guys ha- came up around ages 19, 20. When Miguel Cabrera gets traded, I mean, he's a four-time All-Star who is 5 seasons into his career at age 24. When Juan Soto gets traded, he is a two-time All-Star who's gotten runner-up for Rookie of the Year, MVP votes and everything, Silver Slugger, and he's turning 23 in the year he gets traded. And it's just it's mind-blowing that you see a deal of this magnitude for a guy this young and this good. There was a piece I read today, tons of stats that pretty much was just like showing the career trajectory comparison, and every single guy in the list for the similarity was Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
You know, on
but
base like Ted Williams and things like that. It's just amazing.
here's the thing, because you know prospects better than me. I said that there isn't a single prospect in baseball that I would not, every team's number one prospect is on the table for, even if it's just 3 years of Juan Soto in their prime, because someone like him can make the rest of the team better, can create a super lineup, and he already earned a ring, and he can help get another ring and build another series of great memories for another franchise looking for that ring. And by the way, if you're looking for a ring, may I recommend that you go to BlueNile.com, whether you're ready to pop the question, celebrate a milestone moment, or acquire Juan Soto. Find jewelry as unique as the one you love at BlueNile.com. Now, guess what? If you're looking for fine jewelry, but you're having trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at any budget. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on now is the Blue Nile anniversary sale. Save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, ships for free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. I want to bring up a couple of, I guess, scenarios or questions regarding some of the teams that went trading. I think there's a big difference between tanking and trading to replenish your farm system. I think what the Oakland A's have done since the end of last year, they've traded away about 6 or 7 proven major leaguers, and they brought in around 16 or 17 prospects into their system. It just seems, whether it was Montas, Manaea, Olson, Bassett, no matter who it was that they were putting in onto the trade block, they weren't just getting a good prospect back. They were getting a quality prospect and volume, which sometimes is almost as important to sort of flush your farm system out with teams. It was some of the team's top prospects. I want your take on what the Las Vegas A's are doing in terms of what looks like is a fast track to yet another rebuild going on, which in the team that I hope stays in the East Bay.
They are one of the 3 teams that I think has really done a good job, and I'd probably have them 1A, 1B with the Reds, as far as making sure that you get compensated in both quality and quantity for the pieces that you're selling. I've been very impressed with the return, whether it was making sure you got Shea Langoliers when you made the Olsen trade with the Braves. Just like every single deal, it feels like the A's have gotten multiple players, and they've been very good players. I think that it's a little early to say that every trade that the prospects they picked were the right guys. Christian Pache was a kind of a throw in with the Olsen deal from the Braves, and it didn't necessarily work out that well. But Oakland has done a very good job at maximizing these guys to get prospects that have high ceilings, prospects that fit in well with what the team is trying to do and that are not blocked and can get playing time rather quickly. And I've been very impressed with some of their moves so far in the last year or so.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up the Reds because I was wondering what the Reds were up to. And they did get back quite a lot for both Castillo and Molly. Is anyone from their haul you look at going like, oh wow, I didn't expect them to jump in there?
So they got 10 prospects back from their trades. 3 of those prospects were like among the best 7 guys that got traded. I loved the return for the Tyler Mahle trade. I think they got 3 really good guys. So they got infielder Spencer Steer.
Mhm.
You know, utility guy, can play anywhere in the infield defensively, offensively, contact oriented bat, gets really hard contact or makes really hard contact. He's automatically a top 10 prospect in this system. Christian Encarnacion Strand, third baseman. He's one of those massive power types that every minor league system seemingly has 1 or 2 guys that if they connect, they just absolutely crush a ball. He's one of those guys, tons of raw power. Is probably going to be third baseman or first baseman for them in the future. And they got a really interesting pitcher, lefty Steven Hadger, in the Tyler Mahle trade. And then when you turn around and you look at what they got for Luis Castillo from the Mariners, they picked up 4 players there, 2 of which are top shortstops. Noelvie Marte is a top 100 prospect in baseball. He came over. He'll probably have to move to third base or to second base or somewhere else, but that's fine because they got a second shortstop in that deal, who is also a absolutely, I'm sorry, I've got the name right here.
Of course you do. You're Lindsay Crosby.
Wow.
Sorry.
Anyway, so they got 2 shortstops and two pitchers, and the point of this is like they now have 4 or 5 different prospect shortstops. Brandon Barrero, Ellie De La Cruz, just guys that are no doubt shortstops now. And if you see a right-handed throwing position player on the field, they probably started their career off as a shortstop or a center fielder.
Right.
And so having 3 or 4 guys that are no doubt defensive shortstops means you can fill out just about your entire team now. Your corner outfields, your center fields, your other positions around the diamond with players. They did a really good job of getting a good haul for the players they shipped out.
Yeah, and I think in some ways, when you look at how did a team do come trade deadline, in some ways that's one of the reasons why I brought up the A's. I'm glad you brought up the Reds too. Is sometimes putting players from all different positions and just putting it through your farm system. To me, that was one of the things that Houston did in the early 2010s when they were trading everything that wasn't nailed down, and we saw that they got good prospects back in their trades, but they also got quantity too. And that means you're going to have a strong system that you're passing your players through. Hey, talking about a system that has a lot of players, including ready-made play or ready for the major leagues level players, I predicted that St. Louis was going to be the landing spot for Juan Soto. One of the reasons why I did is Carlson, a lot of other players who seem to be should be on a major league team, that they're ready. And then I thought that St. Louis would be able to put together a package that would appease Washington, or maybe do a thing where they include some of their top prospects and take Corbin's contract, do kind of like what happened in the aforementioned Miguel Cabrera trade, which was facilitated by Dontrelle Willis's deal. Another deal involving the Marlins was Josh Beckett they were forced to take Mike Lowell's contract, and what a tragedy that was, as Mike Lowell wound up winning the World Series MVP. But I digress. I really thought St. Louis made a couple of small deals, including bringing Quintana and making the strange deal for Montgomery with New York, but they didn't make the blockbuster deal, which I'm sure makes Milwaukee thrilled that they didn't pull off the blockbuster. But I'm really surprised because St. Louis has been aggressive in the past, bringing in the Arenados and the Goldschmidts in the world. I thought this would have been the jewel in that crown. What do you think caused them to be a little gun shy?
So I thought that they were a great landing spot. I thought they had the farm system to do it. I think ultimately there was two things they were thinking about. Just this is looking not as a St. Louis guy, just kind of look from the outside.
Right.
Is one, they really, really like their number one prospect, third baseman Jordan Walker. They see him as a guy that is one of those, while he's blocked right now because you've got an Arenado and a Goldschmidt in the corners, he's a guy that 6'5", 220, looks like he's going to be a 35 to 40 home run power, and he's got enough. He has a good arm and he has enough speed where you can move him to a right field or to a left field and get him up pretty quickly. And then I think that they were concerned about the pitching. They wanted pitching. They wanted some sort of high end starter so that when they got to the postseason, they weren't, they had the elite velo, they had the elite spin, they had the stuff that you need to win postseason games. I don't think Jordan Montgomery from the Yankees was that guy, but I think those were kind of the two things. Some of the people that I were talking to said that Dylan Carlson ended up being the deal breaker. The Nationals wanted Dylan Carlson back in the deal, and since they're already missing Harrison Bader out with an injury right now, they would have depleted the center field options too much if they sent Carlson in the deal for Juan Soto. To which I say, it's Juan Soto. You can figure it out.
Yeah, I know. That's what drives me crazy. Okay, now what was the name of the Cardinals top prospect again?
Third baseman Jordan Walker.
Right, Jordan Walker. That was the name I couldn't think of before. No pressure, Jordan. No pressure that you are the person that was not included in a trade for Juan Soto. No
you were in
pressure
high
on these
school 2
prospects.
years ago, and now you're the reason they didn't trade for Juan Soto, but it'll be fine. Just go learn this new position and get used to MLB pitching at the same time. It's fine.
I'm thinking of Jesus Montero right now. And Jesus Montero was being touted as the next Miguel Cabrera, the Yankee. He was a Yankee prospect who was supposed to be this great big power hitter, blah, 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 blah. And the Yankees would not include him in a trade in 2010 with Seattle for Cliff Lee. And that would have all but clinched the pennant. And Cliff Lee was acquired by Texas and wound up pitching the Rangers past the Yankees in the ALCS to the American League pennant. Jesus Montero was ultimately flipped for Michael Pineda in a bust-for-bust deal. And, I remember when that trade was made, I never, people would point to, well, Pineda was not great, but Montero was not great. So, they were just two busts. I said, he could have been used to pry loose Cliff Lee.
Yeah, there's more value in a prospect than just what are they going to do on the field for your team. There is the opportunity cost of having this prospect and being willing to move him can get you something else. It's like going back to the Braves. The conversation for the Braves was not Freddie Freeman versus Matt Olson. It was Freddie Freeman and this level of money versus Matt Olson, a lower level of money for more time and for prospects. And ultimately, having the farm system, none of those prospects by themselves probably would have had the impact on that system that Matt Olson's going to have on that team. But the fact that the prospects were there and they were willing to move them meant they were able to fill that hole for 8 years of Matt Olson.
Right. Well, and I just say no prospect is going to be worth Juan Soto now.
Yeah, I'm running through top 100 list in my head, and I'm thinking, is there anybody on here that I would rather have over Juan Soto? And
the answer is no.
The answer is no. There's no single prospect. Now, there is a scenario where I can see the price being high enough where I hesitate, and I think that's what happened to the Dodgers. The Dodgers have a farm system that could have gone out and gotten Juan Soto. The internet would have exploded, but I think the Dodgers looked back and said, here's what Juan Soto will give us for 2.5 years. Here is what we're projecting these prospects and the number of prospects they want from us to get him. cumulatively, like, he's not going to be as big of an impact on our roster because of the talent level we already have. And
Well,
so, but there's no individual prospect that I would keep over Juan Soto.
look at and you're basically making a bet. I mean, you're betting that this prospect will be worth not acquiring Juan Soto, and that is a wild bet to make. And that is a long stretch. And if you're going to make any bets, go to betonline.net. It's the fastest and easiest way to check it on all your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and do you know what? Even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sport wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline is where the game starts. Hey, we're here with Lindsay Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects. Before I say a couple things about Vin Scully, there have been a lot of other people who have been offering a lot of eulogies for Vin Scully, but I think that I would be remiss if I didn't say something. Hey, Lindsay, who do you think, in terms of prospects, won?
In terms of prospects that they acquired, the Reds won the trade deadline over the Nationals, because the Nationals got a haul, but they should have gotten a haul because they had far and away the best player to get traded. The Reds had good players to be traded, but they got very good return on those players. So from a selling perspective, the Reds won the trade deadline.
Again, there you go. So Lindsay Crosby is saying that there will be a Reds dynasty starting in a couple of years. Go to BetOnline and put all your money down. Liquidate everything.
The strategy is all shortstops. Just 9 shortstops on the field at once.
Well, look at baseball lost a great voice, literally a great voice, in Vin Scully. It's funny, as someone who grew up with a Boston Red Sox fan, Vin Scully's voice was that of our darkest moment, because he was the one who was announcing Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. So there were so many years I was 14 when that happened. So I only knew Vin Scully as the guy from the NBC Sports, and who broadcast my least favorite moment in sports history. So I didn't have a glowing memory of Vin Scully when I was a kid. But eventually, when I became older, and ultimately when I moved to California, I grew a tremendous appreciation. He's one of these trailblazing broadcasters who so many people have emulated. You almost forget that his casual style of broadcasting was revolutionary when he started as a 25, 26-year-old in Brooklyn in the 1950s. If you want a masterclass of saying wonderful little statements that build up the drama, watch his call of the Kirk Gibson home run. When Gibson comes out of the dugout and he says, "Look who's coming up," and
It's Kirk Gibson with 2 bad legs. Like, I remember that.
but he didn't say that. Look who's coming up, and he would let the scene play out. And at one point, he says he's shaking his leg like a horse trying to get rid of a bothersome fly. I mean, a fantastic, illustration. At one point, he says to Joe Garagiola, Joe Garagiola is my all-time favorite announcer. So when you have him in a booth with Vin Scully, you know there's going to be some great, great calls that are made. And then he just says at one point, "Not a bad opening act," and that's before the home run. And then when he hit the home run, this is one of the things that Garagiola does wonderfully. For all the criticism of Joe Buck, he does a good job of this too. Vin Scully did it perfectly that night. He says, "High fly ball to right field. She is gone." And then he let the scene play out.
He lays out.
Let the screaming go on. He let the shot of Lasorda jumping up and down, Kirk Gibson doing the arm fist pump and everything like that. And then he breaks the silence when there's the celebration at home plate by saying, in a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. And that's just a great line and summed it up perfectly. But I want to address one other thing that I thought was very important and why missing Vin Scully is it breaks one of the illusions of baseball. Baseball has a timeless quality, and at its best, it has the past, present, and future all happening simultaneously, seemingly. And Vin Scully was the announcer in Brooklyn, replacing Red Barber. And so when you think about the Dodgers that he called, Jackie Robinson, Duke Snyder, Pee Wee Reese, Don Newcomb, Roy Campanella, then Maury Wills, Sandy Koufax, Don Drysdale, Steve Garvey, Ron Say, Davey Lopes, Don Sutton, Dusty Baker, Bill Russell, Steve Yeager, Fernando Mania, he was there. The great Sandy Koufax throwing those no-hitters, 3-2 to Harvey Keene. All those calls were done by him. The Gibson home run. When Fernando threw his no-hitter, he says, if you've got a sombrero, throw it in the air. Oral Hershiser, Mike Piazza, when Manny Ramirez showed up here and everything went bananas. All the way to Clayton Kershaw. The manager of the Dodgers, when he stopped announcing, was Dave Roberts. He was there before Walter Alston, who was the first manager. Before they won a championship in Brooklyn, he was the voice. And he ended when Dave Roberts was the manager. And so there was a continuity. And when he was announcing, it was like there still was a connection to Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. There still was a tiny connection to that tree growing in Brooklyn, that they're Dodgers. It's still the Dodgers. And when Vin left, it seemed like that was gone. And so a person like him is important in baseball lore and for baseball fandom, and certainly worth a tip of the cap here at Locked On MLB here. And again, other people are going to give more heartfelt eulogies to Vin Scully, but I just wanted to address that. And there was a connection to the baseball that my parents grew up with. And losing that, baseball lost a little something today. So
very well said.
There you go. Well, look, you deal with the future. I'm talking about the past. But the present is you can follow Locked On MLB Prospects. Lindsay Crosby, where can people follow you?
So I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. My show is on Twitter at Locked On Farm, or you can get Locked On MLB Prospects wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube.
All right. And you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the present, talking about the future, talking about the past. Time has no purpose. We're going through the Stargate with Lindsay Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects. I'm your pal Sully. Wait, I didn't do my normal outro right there. Hey, thanks for listening to Locked On MLB. I'm going to grab me a Built Bar. Take care.